Winning a World Cup once already places a player in a category that almost no one reaches. Winning it twice is something the sport has never seen in the modern era. And yet, 4 years after Qatar, the idea still hasn't faded. Because when you look at Lionel Messi, it doesn't feel like the story is finished. So here is the idea that shouldn't make sense. What if Messi wins the World Cup again? Modern football does not allow repeat World Cup winners. This isn't an opinion, it's the result of how the tournament and the sport have changed. In earlier eras, continuity was possible. Teams stayed together for years, players played fewer matches per season, and tactical preparation was far more limited. When Brazil won in 1958 and 1962, most of the core played domestic football, physical demands were lower, and opponents had limited footage, data, and scouting tools. The gap between teams was wider, and surprises lasted longer. That world no longer exists. Since then, defending champions have consistently failed. Brazil couldn't repeat in 2006, despite arriving with Ronaldo, Ronaldinho, Kaká, and Adriano. Spain collapsed in 2014 after dominating world football for 6 years. Germany exited in the group stage in 2018 as champions. France came close in 2022, but even they couldn't finish the job. These weren't weak teams, they were exposed teams. The 4-year gap now works against champions. Players age into peak condition, physical reserves fade, and every tactical detail is dissected. By the time a champion returns, opponents no longer react late. The delay has turned into a football ecosystem with more matches, more pressure, and far more tactical scrutiny. Modern football closed that door decades ago, so winning again doesn't simply mean beating 7 opponents, it means surviving a tournament structure that has destroyed champions repeatedly before it. This is no longer about belief or emotion. That's why this idea hasn't been dismissed as impossible. And yet, 4 years later, it still refuses to go away. Not because of nostalgia, but because something about 2022 didn't feel like an ending. Qatar 2022 didn't complete Lionel Messi's story. It removed something that had followed him for most of his career. For years, every World Cup match felt like a trial. The lost final in 2014, penalties. The weight of comparisons never stopped. Club football had already secured his status, but with Argentina, every tournament reopened the same argument. As he reached his mid-30s, Messi wasn't just trying to win. He was trying to close a case that never seemed to end. You could see that pressure early in Qatar. Against Saudi Arabia, after the upset loss, the tournament could have collapsed around him like before. Against Mexico, with Argentina on the brink of elimination, Messi didn't chase the game for 90 minutes. He waited for a moment, one strike from distance, and the tournament changed. That was the first sign. Something was different. From there, his approach became more controlled. Against the Netherlands, he didn't dominate the match physically, but he dictated it emotionally, managing the tempo, choosing moments, deciding when to intervene. In the final against France, he wasn't everywhere. He didn't need to be. He appeared when the match reached its breaking point, again and again. Once the trophy was lifted, the pressure disappeared instantly. Not slowly, not over time. The debate ended, and with it the need to constantly justify himself. That's when Messi became selective with his energy and trusted the structure around him. This is what people miss when they talk about relief. Some players fade when pressure remains, others become more dangerous when it disappears. Messi now plays without legacy anxiety, and that changes everything. It changes his entire approach. If he no longer has to perform miracles, does Argentina still function? The idea that Lionel Messi is still carrying Argentina can no longer be measured by what happens on the pitch alone. Under Lionel Scaloni, Argentina is not a team built around rescue moments. The midfield triangle provides constant protection. Rodrigo de Paul handles pressing and ball recovery. Enzo Fernandez controls tempo and progression. Alexis Mac Allister links phases and arrives late into the box. That balance keeps the center stable, so the game doesn't collapse onto Messi's feet. Up front, Argentina now has direct outlets. Julian Alvarez presses relentlessly and stretches defenses vertically. On the flanks, Nicolas Tagliafico and Nahuel Molina provide depth without forcing Messi to drop deep to create space. The burden that once dragged him down is now distributed across the team. This completely changes Messi's role. He no longer drops deep to organize build-up or roams constantly to reset structure. He stays higher, reads the rhythm, and steps in when the match needs a decision. He can disappear for long stretches without dominating the ball, and Argentina stays in control. That's the key shift. Messi is no longer the system's lifeline. He's the finisher of processes the team sustains without him. Tournament football rewards this type of balance. Not constant brilliance, but protection around one player who can change everything with a single touch. But systems don't stay fresh forever. They're built, analyzed, and eventually tested. That's why history keeps repeating itself. Because champions almost never repeat. When Lionel Messi arrived in Qatar in 2022, he still had something modern champions rarely keep for long: uncertainty around him. Opponents knew his quality, but they didn't fully know how Argentina would structure itself around him under pressure. Scaloni's system was still evolving, roles were flexible, and Messi's exact function changed from match to match. That ambiguity mattered. It bought time and space that usually disappear after a title. That advantage is now gone. Every major opponent heading toward 2026 is building game plans with one goal in mind: limiting Messi's influence without collapsing defensively. His positioning, his preferred zones, the moments when he chooses to accelerate the game, all of it has been studied, tested, and rehearsed. Argentina won once by being adaptable. The second time, adaptability becomes harder to disguise. Age compounds that exposure. Messi doesn't need to decline dramatically for this to matter. He only needs to lose half a step, one recovery, one extra touch under pressure. At this level, those details don't reduce quality. They reduce margin. This is the part history doesn't clearly show on paper. Champions age in variable ways, without clean data. There's no historical curve that tells you how a player like him behaves at this age, in this context. Not in terms of talent, but in availability. The real uncertainty isn't whether Messi can produce quality, but how, often, and under what conditions. How many minutes he accumulates before the tournament imposes itself. How many times his body is pushed through full phases. Whether he arrives fresh or protected is still unknown. What makes this cycle different from past ones is that Messi no longer needs to carry volume. The question is whether he can strike selectively. Can he be managed so that his highest intensity is reserved for specific phases, specific matches, and specific moments? Argentina's structure will decide that. Argentina has become a team in the best possible way, a team that functions collectively, not one that collapses into dependency. The context matters here as well. Argentina's path to 2026 makes it unlikely they'll need maximum output from Messi early on. That lowers immediate risk and increases the chance his energy is preserved for rounds where margins disappear. That's why this remains uncomfortable. If Messi can arrive healthy, protected, and properly managed, then the impossible doesn't look as unrealistic. And that leads to the real question no one wants to ask. What would it mean if he actually did it? If Lionel Messi were to win the World Cup again, it wouldn't register as just another trophy added to an already crowded resume. It would change how football evaluates conquest itself. Winning twice isn't supposed to happen anymore. That's why it wouldn't validate Messi through luck. It would do the opposite. Luck doesn't survive repetition. Greatness doesn't align twice across 4-year cycles. Different teams, different opponents, different physical realities. If it happened again, the explanation wouldn't be fortune. It would be inevitability under pressure. For Messi, that would mean something overwhelming. His career wouldn't just represent excellence within the game, but a breaking of the game's constraints. One player doing twice what modern football allows a player to do once. And that's why this question won't sit comfortably, no matter how impossible it seems. The question isn't whether it's possible. The question is why it still feels possible. If you enjoyed this kind of deep dive and want more football stories that go beyond headlines and news, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And let me know in the comments, not what you expect to happen, but what you think. Can Messi win the World Cup again?